was a youth in the street. I come from a struggling family. I don't have a silver spoon either. And I've been around the States, been around about 10 countries. I've seen police violence in various ways. And I also want to address something about Hart Knocker to you. Hart Knocker is not part of our community. He's a sexual predator, and what he has said is wrong, and it's violent. I also want to say, aside from my time, he is not part of our community of Don't Shoot. He is not part of Occupy. He is not part of anything like that. He is a sexual predator, and he needs to stay away from us. So, yeah, these two subjects kind of touch me to my heart about these. One, starting with militarization of law enforcement. So I said, I've been around, I've seen a lot of messed up stuff that police do, and they have a lot of fancy toys that can hurt us, and I've been hurt by them, and I witnessed them. What is your opinion as officers when you see this, or do you like military toys?
I think some of the things we use now that are they call less lethal cause less injury than in the past. In the past, you would see 4 or 5 police officers literally jump on people because we didn't have those tools that we had before. Now we have the other tools where you have one officer engaging one person, and I will tell you, I was the first person went through the training, the taser training and tasered on the police bureau. Those tools, for most part, are more recoverable from than when you have 5 or 6 officers having to subdue somebody, and hopefully nobody gets hurt in those cases. So they're not toys. They're actually approved, and a lot of those less lethal options have gone through training nationwide, not just here in Portland, and has gone through citizen review boards and everything like that. So I will say that they're not toys. We don't treat them as toys. We understand that even if they're less lethal, they still cause pain and they can still cause injury, and we treat them with that respect.
Yes.
So I'm very wary of the use of military-style gear by police
Exactly.
force.
I've seen it everywhere.
It is disconcerting when you see what looks like an Army unit in some other city. So I'm very wary of that, and in my direction to the Police Bureau, again, it's more about community policing and a lot less about those kind of tools that you just described. Use of force overall, by the way, is down. It's been down for 7 years. As of September of last year, because we don't always have current data, we had 575 incidents in 2014 of the use of force of any kind. During the same period in 2008, that was 1,300. So going in the right direction. There's always room for improvement.
Yeah.
Tasers and other non-lethal tools for police officers sometimes enable them to deal with somebody who's violent in a way that is less lethal than a gun. That's been our experience, at least at times in the world. Understand again the context. There were 4 times in the last 2 years in which a citizen died because of being shot by a police officer. They were mostly suicides by cop. But when there's a situation where they can use a taser or some other non-lethal means to deal with somebody that's violent, I believe in that.
Okay, quickly, I have another 2 things to ask with my time. Mental health and racism. Does the Portland Police Department have its own mental health program, and if so, how integrated is this program into the lives of officers on duty and off duty?
So, do you mean a program that officers access, or something that we have a BHU unit, which actually is officers who are specialized in mental health issues. We're not experts as
mental health for yourself.
But for ourselves, we do have what we call EAP, which is an employee assistance program, where officers, their families, not only just the officers, but also family members can go seek counseling for different issues that they have in their lives, like everybody else, and also work things too. Yes.
Okay. Before I get my time knocked off, how does the Portland Police Department address racism among its own officers?
Hand me your question and we'll do it. I wanted to go ahead and just say again, we're in my pastor's church. This is a 125-year-old church. This congregation is being respectful enough to allow us to be here. And so this dialogue, because of the space that we picked on our terms, needs to be respectful. Jasmine?
Hello, I'm Jasmine Reed, and I'm here with Don't Shoot Portland, and I have 4 anonymous questions to read to the panel. first one is, the mayor stated that the percentage of African Americans stopped fell from 11% to 4%. Yet the recent reports states that it dropped from 13.1% to 12.8%. Did the mayor misspeak?
No, there's a 4% disparity between African American stops and white stops. That's Deanna can probably do a better job of pulling that apart than I have.
We just got those, we haven't done all of the great talking points on them. So actually what changed was the hit rate in finding contraband. So it used to be an 11% disparity between African American and Latinos and white people who were searched by the police. And so now there's only a 4% difference between finding contraband on the white people who were searched and finding contraband on the people of color, African Americans or Latinos. And part of that is resulting from training that the Police Bureau has been doing regarding officers being more thoughtful in who they are approaching and deciding to ask for a consent search. There has also been a change in training from what the DA's office is training officers on. It used to be really encouraging officers to use consent searches as often as possible, and now is really encouraging officers to be more thoughtful and recognizing the impact that it has on an individual to be searched by a police officer. It can be very negative when someone is just waiting at the bus and not doing anything. So why are you asking this person for a consent search? So that is, we're really happy about that decline, and that was one of the things that people were very concerned about, and training and policies addressed the disparity in what's called a hit rate. It's a horrible name, but it's called a hit rate, and actually how often officers find contraband on someone who's searched.
One of the things we'll do is
As Deanna said, we just got this data this week. We will put all that out on my website so people can see it, the whole report of what's happened in terms of disparity in stops, so that people can see both the real numbers and the trends of what's going on.
Thank you. The second question, in the early 90s, I carried 2 petitions to give the Citizens Police Review more power. We still did not, no? Okay, moving on. Mayor Hales and Mr. Turner, you've stated cultural awareness is being served by who we hire. I believe we might have touched on this just a minute ago. What about who we fire? What about current officers with history of excessive force against people of color and people that suffer from mental health issues that are still serving on the force?
Yeah, again, I can't do anything about the past, but in the last 2 years, the past before I became mayor, that is, but I can apply discipline day by day now, and the chief sends me recommendations and I act on them. So again, I think if you look, we've been pretty consistent that if you violate the rules, whether it's disparate treatment, whether it's personal behavior, like getting drunk and driving, which is something that we have had to fire people for, we've been really consistent about applying those rules now.
And real quick before you go, Jasmine, because Jasmine is bringing up anonymous questions. If you are working in police reform, if you are not just a regular community member that has probably never spoke to the mayor or any of these elected officials or policymakers or the union president, don't send your question up here because you're taking a space from somebody that hasn't had the opportunity. It's disrespectful.
But what you also can do, by the way, if we run out of time today, is you can email those questions to us, and we'll get you my answer.
Yeah, send them to him directly. Don't do it here.
Thank you. And for the last question, okay, so you want to hire better, but what about accountability for those you already have?
We're getting there.
I'm Logan. I'm part of Don't Shoot PDX. And why waste people's tax money for the use of body cameras if police aren't even yet using them and they're not being held accountable with or without them?
Yeah, again, I've been a little surprised at the reaction about body cameras, and we need to have a big public debate about this. But again, I believe it's not just are they good in and of themselves, but it's how you use it. They can be used in a way that will improve justice, and they could probably be used in a way that would make it worse. So I think there's some details that matter, like who gets to turn it on and off.
How would it disimprove the justice system?
Well, again, I believe that if an officer is wearing a camera and is having a conversation with a citizen and knows that that's being recorded, they are likely to do a really good job in terms of their conversation with that citizen. Secondly, if something bad happens, we'll have an impartial record, or at least another view of what happened. And again, my personal experience about this was seeing that film that a citizen took with their iPhone of an officer-involved shooting. It, to me, gave me more information than I could ever see in reading reports.
Can I just add, one of the ways in which we think that, or that we know it could make things worse is about the privacy issues. So say an officer has a camera on and does not have the ability to turn it off, and they're interviewing someone who has been a victim of a sexual assault, and that person doesn't want to talk with it being on camera. It is a big discussion, and we need to have very specific policies as to when that camera has to be on or when it has to be off, because we don't want to get to a place where we're discouraging people from reporting crimes or being forthcoming with information that we need to be able to investigate what has happened to them and then find, the perpetrator. There's also, often people call police when they're at their worst moment, whether it's a mental health crisis, a fight with their partner, whatever it is. We don't want that information to become public record that's just out there for everybody to see and comment on. So that's how it could negatively impact the justice system.
Also, there are what they call HIPAA violations, which a lot of times we go to medical calls and people giving medical information to EMTs as they're asking them questions. If you're laying down and the EMTs are asking you have high blood pressure, you have HIV, do you have hepatitis C? If you're answering those questions and a police officer standing right there with the camera on, obviously all that information is being recorded. That's confidential HIPAA information, and that's violation of the law to be able to record that and be able to disseminate that to anybody else. So there are a lot of legislative changes that need to be made before body cams can be implemented. This is not just a put it on, push the button and go. Legislative law down in Salem has to be changed. There has to be policies implemented that protect the citizens as much as protect the officers. So it's 24 hour surveillance on everybody. So we have to be able to do all those things and have the policies in place to protect everybody before you can just slap them on an officer and put them on.
Okay, and so I wanted to ask another community question. Were you finished, Logan?
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Logan, for your questions. Before Nick goes, I wanted to ask another community question from an anonymous person that's here. And they basically say, we want to know, why is there a parole and probation building connected to Martin Luther King School? And why is it that the only school that has that type of entity connected to it? We also noticed that the majority of the kids who came out of that school has landed in prisons and on parole and probation. So I think what the question is are you profiling our children so that they can be recipients of your justice system and your prison?
Well, let me touch on that issue. One of the areas I think we have a lot of work to do as a community is disproportionate discipline for our kids in our schools. And I'm not the only one that believes this, and actually Lorenzo Poe at the Portland Public School District is leading an effort to change that, because 10% of African American high school students in Portland have been expelled or suspended, and 2% of white students have. And that starts very early in those kids' academic career. And if you suspend a kid 2 or 3 times between kindergarten and 3rd grade, they're already on the wrong track in terms of school success. And I give Lorenzo and the Portland School District a lot of credit, because they've looked right straight at this problem and they've written down the numbers of what's wrong now. And they've set some very ambitious goals about changing those numbers in the next year. Not 5 years, not 10 years, but starting right now. So this is a big issue about how we track people early. It's not a police issue per se, but after that kid's been suspended 2 or 3 times, the odds of that kid start to encounter the police bureau are pretty high. So I believe getting upstream, as this question suggests, is a way for us to make a difference. I'm sorry. King School, I don't know. That's a county parole and probation facility. Maybe. Okay, Antoinette says there are no longer officers there. Okay.
My name is Nick Caleb. I'm a teacher at Concordia University, and I'm a big supporter of Don't Shoot PDX. This might be a really naive question, but I'm just curious as to why citizens can't have direct oversight over police discipline. And if it's just a labor law question, then why isn't the city negotiating to allow for more direct oversight? And if the city was to posture in that way and actually to put forward some ideas for direct citizen oversight, including disciplining officers for the directives that you're talking about, maybe even firing officers if it's appropriate, citizens making a decision. If the city decided to go that way, would the police PPA oppose it? And if so, why?
Let me start. I believe it's my job as a police commissioner to carry out discipline for our officers. I believe it's the right of citizens through the process that we have to provide oversight of that discipline, and we do have that. So I think we've done a pretty good job of striking that balance. I'm accountable, but citizens are involved in the community police review process, the independent police review process. It isn't part of my office. It's administered by the city auditor. So I think we've got a separation of powers there where the city auditor runs the independent police review process. They look over the chief's shoulder and over my shoulder in terms of how that discipline is imposed. So not perfect, but considerable amount of citizen eyes on the work. I don't know of any cities in the United States where citizens who aren't given public authority, like I am as mayor, are allowed to fire public employees. I don't know if that exists anywhere in the United States. I can imagine that that would be very difficult to do, even if I thought it was a good idea. But I think it's a good idea for me to be accountable and for you to be able to look over my shoulder.
Right, and I'll let you answer because there's a totally different question, but one of the examples where in the last few years where this was immediately apparent to me at least was with Mark Kruger, who, got to the point where, and people know the name, I think, the Nazi cop. And what ended up happening is basically he was removed by the city and then reinstated, right? And then the city couldn't do anything, and then we kind of like signed an agreement with them and all the rest. Wouldn't we be able to negotiate for oversight in the labor contract so that stuff couldn't happen? And if we could, why would we oppose it from the PPA's standpoint?
And number one, Mark Kruger's in a different union, that's a management union, which no longer exists for commanders of captains. And I think the mayor did that too, so he can have more oversight over his command staff people in decision making. And again, that's part of the management labor agreement that has been there forever. And unless both parties saw a need to change it, there probably wouldn't be any change. And I don't know if there's a need to change it at this point in time. I wholeheartedly believe that even though we don't agree and we don't come down on the same decisions, that the chief and the mayor should be the ones making the decision based on discipline and based on termination, things like that. So although we don't always agree, when it comes down to it, if we go to arbitration and we lose, we understand that's the final decision. When we go to arbitration and they lose, they understand that's the final decision too.
But the mayor signed it without reading it.
And I wanted to say real quick, because I see a couple of my comrades in the line again, we need to give people a chance.